looks like the sun's out again today. It seems like the wind died a bit too, which makes it easier to fly. And I guess with that in mind, in terms of flying, because this was kind of spreading around everywhere for some reason. You all know that story in Shanghai with the lockdowns, where people are going crazy, there's a lack of food. How about this one? I guess this guy posted this video here saying, grocery shopping in Shanghai, 2022 edition. From the looks of it, it seems like it's a drone, possibly a Mavic, just by the design. It seems like a fishing line or something goes down, it takes the fish, and there it goes, airborne, so you're drone fishing. Is this a sign to say, look how desperate people are to get food with those crazy lockdowns? He did say this was a video that was a prank of sort, but it makes you wonder, would you actually do this with your drone to go fishing? I know actually there has been some people who tried it more as a joke. I don't know, would you ever do this as a regular serious thing versus actually bringing out a boat, for example, and doing it the traditional way? I would imagine it would be more about, I guess, power, isn't it, with a drone, with the fish being able to pull the drone right into the water afterwards? It raises the question too, should people be able to do stuff like this with their drone if it works per se? Because a lot of people would say, no, ban them all or treat them all like a huge manned aircraft that's used for military purposes. Because reading this, I would have thought most people would have used a drone for this just as a regular thing. But it says here, I found one of the best uses for a drone and it's not what you think. I've flown many of the best drones, having a grand time taking them up hundreds of feet and capturing sweeping panoramas of New York City, farms in upstate New York, and more. It's remarkable how well they can take stunning photos and videos and how easy they are to fly. Anyone who wants to get a new view of the world should check them out. And his, I guess, discovery in terms of its usefulness is for things like, I guess, house inspections and all that. It says, but I found a far more mundane but highly practical use for drones, checking my gutters for leaves. Making sure your gutters are clean of leaves and other debris is an important task. If water can't flow down your gutters, it can back up and either cascade over the top, which can lead to dangerous ice patches, or flow into your house, causing thousands of dollars in damage. But unless you live in a ranch house, it's often hard to get at your gutters to see if they're clogged. So that's the example here, where I guess under regular circumstances with hollow places, you'll need to bring up a ladder and all that, and most people don't want to do that. Whereas with this, the person could literally take, I guess you could say, a quote cheap drone and just look at it and say, oh, there's a problem or there's not. And one of the points he mentions in terms of the ease of use and learning curve is pretty straightforward for most of the consumer drones, which begs the question again, should people be able to use stuff like this for basic stuff without over the top and ridiculous, I guess, fear mongering and all that? Because at what point is this going to be like, say, nobody should have pens and pencils because you could theoretically, for example, use it to injure people? I mean, that's a little ridiculous in my opinion, but that's kind of how it's like in many cases with things like a modern day consumer drone. And I thought this was fascinating, where recently with all that news about Elon Musk potentially buying out Twitter, with the argument being it needs to be bought out due to things like free speech, because certain platforms allegedly, like say Twitter, are censoring people like crazy. And it was kind of interesting to hear, I guess, with this thought on whether or not he could make a difference, but he's kind of suggesting no, he won't, just because of how big the issue is. This says here, I've now been asked multiple times for my take on Elon's offer for Twitter. So fine, this is what I think about that. I will assume the takeover succeeds and he takes Twitter private. He goes, I have little knowledge or insight into how actually takeover battles work out or play out. And he says here, I think if Elon takes over Twitter, he is in for a world of pain. He has no idea. There is this old culture of the internet, roughly Web 1.0, late 90s, and early Web 2.0, pre-Facebook, pre-2005, that had a very strong free speech culture. This free speech idea arose out of a culture of late 90s America, where the main people who were interested in censorship were religious conservatives. In practical terms, this means that they would try to ban porn or other imagined moral degeneracy on the internet. And he says, remember when it seemed very important to certain people that we ban things like this? That looks like a screenshot from Mortal Kombat 2. Johnny Cage doing like what, a fatality on Raiden? I know there were a lot of people really against stuff like this where they dedicated to seem like their life to ban stuff like this, but nowadays what? You see them in most places, they're just warning, I guess, labels or ratings, just like a movie and so forth. But I can see that point there, where there were a lot of people who wanted to censor stuff like this, just completely ban it in general. It says many of the older tech leaders today, Elon Musk, PM Marka, etc., Gen Xers basically grew up with that internet. To them, the internet represented freedom, a new frontier of flowering of human spirit, and a great optimism that technology could birth a new golden age of mankind. So it's kind of interesting hearing his take, which I think is a little debatable. For example, when it comes to things like censorship, he's arguing most companies, they don't actually want to do it, but I guess they have to for things like order, if that's what you want to say. It says, you really want to avoid censorship on social networks? Here's the solution. Stop arguing, play nice. The catch, everyone has to do it at once. I guarantee you, if you do that, there will be no censorship of any topic on any social network. Because it is not topics that are censored, it is behavior. He then goes into things like those left and right stuff, which again, I personally don't care because I don't follow politics usually, but just in terms of that notion, saying it's not the topics that are censored, but behaviors, it makes me wonder if this guy's actually outdated, because just based on my personal observation, it is topics that are actually censored, and depending on who it comes from, they could be, say, I don't know, banned or censored. Just use an example here on YouTube, they did not hide the fact, like they said, when it comes to certain information or news, they will want to, for example, I guess, push who they deem as an authoritative source. And if they don't deem someone else as the quote authoritative source, then they will be, I guess, deranked or something like that. So that is a form of censorship, in my opinion. And they could be on their quote best behavior. They're just revealing the facts. But like there, it would show if they don't like something that you're talking about, they could, in a sense, censor you. And I know that's happened for sure. Like even on this platform where people just talk about a subject, just mentioning it, they get banned. And then people try to appeal it. Nope. They claim we reviewed this and it goes against our policies and so forth. So I think that is inaccurate immediately in terms of that statement saying it's always the behavior, not the topic when it comes to certain platforms and all that. And then there's a thought on how a lot of people would say that he mentions where the key to the censorship on how to deal with it is just don't censor people at all, just let them debate. And he says, how naive. Debate is a vague term. And what a social network observes that causes them to, quote, censor something is masses of people engaging in, quote, debate. That is to say, abusive volumes of activity, violating spam and harassment rules, sometimes prompting off-site real-world harm. And his example was how that story before where people were theorizing that things like the COVID and stuff came from a lab, but various social media sites, they were actually banning or blocking that conversation. It says, replace lab leak theory with whatever topic you think has been unfairly censored, and the reason it was censored or any other action taken against it is not because of the content of that topic. I absolutely assure you. It is because at certain times, given certain circumstances, humans will behave badly when confronted with certain ideas. And if you are the main platform where that idea is being discussed, you cannot do nothing because otherwise humans will continue behaving badly. So the argument there, to my understanding, what he's suggesting is, imagine it kind of like people using a certain company's product, a brand, for example. Let's just say, I don't know, Sony or Canon when it comes to cameras. So the debate there is how you'll have two sides that just tear each other apart, saying their hardware is better than yours, etc., etc. So the suggestion there is, if they start to see all these behaviors of, I guess, quote, fanboys fighting with each other, then they're gonna ban any conversations about those companies' products because they don't want to see this, quote, misbehavior. That's the claim. I don't think that's the case, just based on observation, again, because it seems like it's always like a certain side where, depending on who, I guess you could say, is the moderator or the owner, depending on their personal beliefs, they will tend to be a little bit more biased, it seems like. So like there, how could the solution be, for example, I'm just gonna ban any Sony or Canon owners from talking about like those products because you don't want to see them fight? Wouldn't actually the solution there just be there's a specific policy against behavior like harassment and all that? I can see, but just banning the topic there, that doesn't make sense. And because he doesn't feel that he's going to be able to fix anything, is only going to create more stress on him. He's kind of expressing how it's going to be bad for everyone because now he won't be able to focus on things such as space exploration and all that. It says, and the worst part, the part that is going to hurt all of humanity, is that this will distract from his mission at SpaceX and Tesla, because it's not just going to suck up his time and attention, it will damage his psyche. I mean, it's not like he isn't already an emotionally damaged guy. Sorry, Elon, it's pretty obvious, but he has overcome a lot and he does not need more trauma from running Twitter. Kind of an interesting perspective there. I guess the only argument I could think of is how, let's just say he only focuses on space and all that. I guess that's true. You could argue now he's not going to dedicate his time to that. It'll be a loss innovation-wise, but at the same time, if the person strongly believes where he's creating all these innovations, solutions, and tech, in return that society in general that he's making it for is going to be, I guess in his view, really bad, then why would you want to do that? I guess that would be the argument. For example, I guess the analogy I would use is you go to work, for example, you make money, you raise like a family or a community and all that. So why would you do that if you felt the community now is all corrupted, where they're using, let's just say, your money and your efforts to harm other people? So why would you do that? Wouldn't you want to fix the community versus just going every day, making money, making more innovations and so forth? That would be, I think, the example there from his perspective, from what I understand anyways. And it's kind of true, isn't it? Alright, see you guys later.